Here's a question for you. Can you be fired for swearing at your boss? That became part of the discussion in the Ottawa area because this week, Jim Little, former CEO of the Senators, said that's why Eugene Melnyk fired him. That case, of course, is still to be determined. However, it is an interesting question. Look who's back with us this morning. Alex Lucifero, partner at Samfiru Tumarkin LLP. Good morning.
Morning.
Okay, separate of that, still a valid question. Can you be fired? Can your boss say you're fired because someone swore at him?
Interesting question, Leslie. I think we should start with the premise that it's never a good idea to be swearing at your boss or swearing in the workplace. In general, workplaces should be professional, regardless of the industry, regardless of the type of work you're doing. That is likely inappropriate in the workplace. That said, Leslie, you can be fired for swearing at your boss, certainly, but you can't be fired for what's called cause or just cause, meaning you cannot be fired without the company paying the proper amount of severance or providing the proper amount of notice. There are varying degrees here of seriousness. We can all imagine language that is potentially a for-cause termination. And we can also imagine language that's offensive, but that's not necessarily a for-cause termination.
There's like disagreement with your boss and expressing it publicly, and then there's using a four-letter word.
Yeah, so let's take the Sens and Mr. Little as an example. Clearly there was a heated conversation. Yeah. Clearly there was some offensive language used. But again, it's a question of whether that rises to the level of a for-cause termination, meaning the ability for the Sens in this case to not pay Mr. Little severance, despite the fact that he's a 2-year employee. He would be owed severance. And it simply comes down to, well, what was said exactly?
Yeah.
I can tell you we deal with lots and lots of cases, Leslie, where maybe some offensive language is used, but it doesn't rise to the level of cause, and that employee, without a doubt, is owed severance.
When someone is fired, it's shocking. They don't know what to do. When they eventually come to you and they think, I have no case, how many of the people that come to you actually do have a case?
I would say the majority.
Really?
And I don't want to exaggerate, but I would say almost the vast majority, meaning employees in Ontario don't actually understand how well protected they are in law. Now, I want to be clear. An employer does almost always have the right to let an employee go. So we cannot necessarily contest the termination. Once that decision is made, it's effectively done. We can't get you your job back. But many of those employees will not know that they're owed severance in a case like that. Severance is going to be a significant amount based on an employee's age, position, and years of service.
I was going to say, so that's what it is. Those are the determining factors.
Right.
What if they built a case against you because you have been dropping the ball? I mean, if these kind of things start happening, it works against you, right?
That's right.
I mean, employers are smart these days. They know if there's a bad employee, it's hard to fire them. But if you build your case, the chances of paying a large payout are minimal.
Correct, and it's not only about an employer building their case, let's say, Leslie. The punishment has to be proportionate to the offense.
Right.
So in a case where, for example, an employee is performing badly, there has to be a series of kind of progressive disciplinary measures taken to let that employee know, hey, this is serious. We're going to be taking these steps unless your performance improves. We're also going to try and we have an obligation, rather, to help you try and improve your performance.
What if you're a long-time employee and then just the system has changed? They've gone, technological advances, and you're being a bad employee because you're not going with the new program. But when you were hired, you were great.
Yeah, happens all the time. Happens all the time, more and more nowadays as technologies change.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's clearly not cause for termination, John. So an employee can't be punished for an employer changing their practices. To a certain extent, that employee has to play ball, right? You've got to change with the times.
But what if you don't
so
have
to speak?
the wherewithal to be able to catch the technology and suddenly your position and you don't get along? Does the boss have the right to say, I'm sorry, it's not working out?
They do. Again, let's start with the premise that they do have the right. It's their prerogative to let you go or not. But in a case like that, that's what we call a without cause termination.
So they have a big check to write.
And they have a big check to write. And again, it's going to depend on factors such as age, position, and years of service. And that happens all the time.
What's the biggest award you receive for someone who's come to you?
Generally speaking, the maximum on severance awards is 24 months, so 2 years of pay. 2 years of pay could be a significant amount of money for most employees out there. There are some exceptional cases at 30 months, 2 years and a half, let's say, but those are the rare exception.
Well, the thing is, it gives you enough time to go sort of let the dust settle and go and try to find another job.
That's
right. The most important thing is most Canadians live paycheck to paycheck.
Exactly, and that's the whole point of severance, the whole
If anyone has any question, I mean, does it cost a lot to come and talk to someone like that?
It doesn't necessarily. Every situation is different. Complicated situations, you will need to sit down with a lawyer and go through the entire history of the situation, and maybe that might cost some money. But for people who have been let go, for people with perhaps more straightforward situations, we speak to people all the time. We answer phone calls, cold calls during the day, and we set up consultations with people to discuss their matters, and usually they're relatively straightforward, Leslie.